Hello, everyone. Topic of today's discussion, legislatures. So we'll discuss what they do, what are differences between parliamentary and presidential republics, bicameral, unicameral legislatures, and why legislatures are less influential in recent decades, I would say. As you probably know, legislatures, their main function is to pass laws which govern how society functions. And this is what we'll discuss in the next few minutes. This is what you will learn. Important thing is that the role of legislatures is different in different countries depending on what kind of political system they have. If it's a democracy, let's say United States, UK, Britain, UK, France, Germany, whatever, Japan, South Korea, like if it's a democratic country, legislatures play a very important role, and they're pretty independent. If it's, I don't know, Russia, China, they technically still have legislatures, but they're dominated by executive branch. So role of legislatures largely depends on what kind of political system it is, democratic or authoritarian. Interesting thing about legislatures in a democratic society, laws gets to pass because of different kinds of people try to push for those laws to pass. Sometimes just people want something to happen. An example again would be civil rights movement. Lots of people at some point were like fed up with racism in America, and civil rights legislation was passed. Media reporting again. George Floyd murder generated lots of media reporting, and even during Trump administration, there have been change in U.S. criminal justice system. Executive officials sometimes do have ability to push for legislation. Sometimes it's formal, sometimes informal. For example, in U.S. system, president get to introduce budget. It usually happens in February, and by design, by US system, actually the only law that president can introduce is budget. Other laws, let's say recent major legislation passed during Biden administration, infrastructure acts, environmental legislation. President pushed for it, but he had allies in Congress who actually implemented, introduced, and passed those laws. Sometimes experts do play a role. If Congress or any legislature has a hearing on a particular subject, they sometimes invite experts who say, maybe it makes sense to pass this particular piece of legislation to address a particular public policy issue. And again, this is about democracies. Different functions legislatures do. Most important is pass laws. Legislatures, they have hearings on various issues, like recently in US news, you probably saw hearings on things like protection of minors on the internet, and even at some point into 2024, there have been law passed by Congress which makes social media companies to protect minors against harmful content, and it was a result of multiple hearings held by Congress. Important things legislature do, again, in democracies. They monitor what government does. They summon heads of government agencies and they ask questions about how this particular agency functions. And since legislatures in everywhere, basically, they control budget, they have important tool how to make sure executive agencies do their functions as legislatures want. Legislatures have different rules in terms of how they pass laws. Sometimes it's just a majority. Sometimes in U.S. Senate they have this filibuster rule, which requires, for the most part, 2/3 of people to vote, senators to vote for a particular legislation. Uh, if it's partisan, if it's controversial. If it's not controversial, then simple majority works as well. Another important thing about filibuster is that it could be bypassed by a thing called budget reconciliation process. It allows particular law to be like related to budget, and all things budget, they just require majority. Again, simply speaking, for the most part, you need simple majority for a law to pass, but Senate rules are kind of complicated. Important thing about legislatures, the way they function, they usually are organized by political parties. Some party has a majority, other party in the minority, in two-party systems. But in European systems, or like in Israel, for example, they have coalitions since they have multiple parties, and none of the party has a majority, so they form coalitions in parliament to be able to pass new legislation. Important thing is if it's two-party system, like in the United States, then this party makes all the decision, what kind of laws even considered, how they pass. They pass specific rules on how to consider particular laws. So in two-party systems, if some party is in majority, they control everything. And if you're in a minority in a two-party system, then you basically have zero power. But one caveat, in countries with multiple parties, when they have coalitions, sometimes that minority party could be a member of governing coalition, and in such case that party could be influential, but not in this country, not in the United States. In the United States, if you're in minority, you basically have no power at all. Important thing about legislatures, they have committees on different areas of public policy. Let's say Foreign Relations Committee, Agriculture Committee, uh, Appropriations Committee, which passes budget. And weird thing about budget in this country, in the United States, in most countries, budget is like a single law. In this country, appropriation bills, there are like 12 of them on different areas of public policy. Uh, Defense Department and related agencies appropriation bill, or State Department and related agencies appropriation bill, or Agriculture Department and related agencies appropriation bill. So in this country, in contrast to many other countries, a budget is not a single law, it's 12 laws passed every year. One exception would be, in many cases, in many years, we have seen it for many years, Congress fails to pass appropriation bills on time, and they're supposed to be passed sometime by October 1st, the beginning of fiscal year in this country. And if they fail to pass it, they usually pass concurrent resolutions, which allow government to function for a few months before they pass a budget. And in many cases, you might see it in the news if you pay attention. Sometime in December, they pass omnibus budget bill, where they combine all the bills, appropriation bills, which have not been passed yet, and they pass it as a single law. An important thing and like kind of funny thing is this is December in American system. It's like almost a middle fiscal year. Remember, fiscal year in this country starts on October 1st in terms of government budget. Important distinction about legislatures, at least in this country. Some of them are professional. When people have like decent salaries, it's their full-time job. And in some states within US, like in Texas, people have their day jobs, and in in Texas state legislature, they meet just like a few times a year to pass something, but the legislative activities, it's not their main job. They could be doctors, they could be teachers, whatever, and they would go to a state legislature and pass something like a few times a year. Important thing is in many countries, people who are elected to parliament, to legislature, they're usually, not usually, in some cases, they're elected from particular areas. And this would be an example of Canada in their like electoral districts. Important thing, I think I discussed it before, legislatures get to control executive branch to make sure executive branch functions properly. For example, in 2024, there was assassination attempt against Donald Trump, and House Government Oversight Committee summoned head of Secret Service who didn't perform well, and she was asked to quit, and she actually submitted her resignation. So this is an example of if particular federal government agency screws up, there is usually a hearing in Congress, and if it really screws up, usually head of the agency resigns. So legislatures in democratic societies, they have important role of control in executive branch. In countries like China, Russia, they have zero ability to control executive branch. This is what you will learn in the next few minutes of our discussion about difference in parliamentary and presidential republics. Important thing is basic thing about parliamentary system. There is no separation of power between executive and legislative branches of government. Head of the government, prime minister, is a head of a majority party or majority coalition. And there are a bunch of countries which function this way: United Kingdom, Denmark, Germany, Israel, by the way. In presidential systems, executive and legislative branches are completely separate, and a head of state president usually has, not usually, always has lots of power and is elected directly by people. Again, in this country, in Mexico, in Russia, those are countries where executive branch is completely separate from legislative branch of government. In some countries, like France, for example, they have some kind of mix of systems. In France, they have president who is responsible for foreign policy mostly, and they have a prime minister who is representing majority party in French legislature, National Assembly, I think. And if they're of the same party as the president, then president has lots of power in terms of implementing some domestic changes. But if they're from different party, then president is just responsible for foreign policy. Important thing about American system, in reality, it kind of similar to French system. What I mean by that, if president in this country, in the United States, has control over Congress, if his party has majority in House and Senate, then that president can implement major changes. Again, few examples from recent years. When President Biden had majority in House and the Senate, he was able to pass infrastructure bill. He was able to pass environmental regulations, new environmental initiatives. Same about, and in the last 2 years of his presidency, Biden wasn't able to accomplish anything in terms of passing new major reforms. And the same with Trump. When he had majority in Congress in the first 2 years of his administration, he was able, for example, to pass tax cuts for corporations and for rich people. When he lost majority in Congress in the last 2 years of his presidency, he wasn't able to do much. Again, the same with Obama. In the first 2 years of his presidency, he had majority in Congress, and he passed Affordable Care Act. He passed Dodd-Frank Act, which regulated financial industry. In the remaining 6 years of his administration, he was two-term president. He wasn't able to do much. So, in this kind of weird sense, American political system is kind of similar to French political system. And again, there are all kinds of government in the world: presidential republics, semi-presidential republics, parliamentary republics with executive presidency, constitutional monarchy, absolute monarchy. Not many absolute monarchies exist. The things that I remember would be like Saudi Arabia, like countries in a bunch of countries in the Middle East. Some of them are absolute monarchies. And one-party states, examples would be China, North Korea, countries like that. Important thing about electoral aspect. In parliamentary republics, elections are usually done through proportional representation. It means that if, let's say, 30% of people voted for a particular political party, it means that 30% of seats in the parliament will be held by members of that political party. If, let's say, 25% of people voted for for a political party, then 25% of seats in parliament will belong to that party. This is an example of proportional representation system. An example would be, let's say, Brazil. And then there's a plurality. This is how it's done in United States, Canada, and UK. If someone in a particular district gets more vote than other person, then that person gets government office. And there are mixed systems. For example, in Germany, half of the parliament is elected by proportional system, and half of the parliament is elected through districts. So in the ballot in America, for example, when you see a ballot, you see a bunch of names in people who belong to usually Democrats and Republicans. In country like Germany, for example, when they see the ballot, they see parties and they vote for parties, political parties, and they see a bunch of names. Since again, half of the parliament in Germany is elected through proportional system, and people vote for parties, and half of the people are elected based on district system, plurality system, and people vote for candidates, individuals. In this country, in the United States, we have a plurality system when on the ballot you vote for people. Important thing is this is the reason why United States has only two political parties, in contrast, let's say, to France, Germany, and other parliamentary system. Whenever you have this single-member district electoral system, then in that country you will only have two political parties. So if you are not happy about parties in this country, Democrats, Republicans, well, to change that, you need to change constitution and you need to change electoral system. Electoral system has lots of influence on what kind of party system a particular country has. In this country, again, it functions on single member districts, which results in two party. No other party has any chance of ever becoming influential in this country. And these are loaded outcomes for discussion in the next couple of minutes. In some countries, usually in a unitary system, remember there are two kinds of countries in terms of how they organize their territories. There are federations like United States or Germany, when they have regional governments which are elected by people. And in that case, those countries, they usually have bicameral legislatures. In countries where regional governments are not elected by people, in countries like, let's say, France, well, for instance, an example, in the exception, they have bicameral legislature, but usually if country is unitary, if regional governments are not elected, they have unicameral legislature. And again, bicameral legislatures, we usually see them in federations. And again, federation is a system where regional governments are elected, and the idea is like lower branch of legislature. It represents like people, and like upper branch of legislature, like in this country it's Senate, in the United States it's Senate. This upper house, it usually represents territories. This is why, for example, in the Senate, each state has two senators regardless of population of a particular state. And you will learn this stuff in the next minute or two of our discussion. Important thing is, over the years, legislatures in democratic societies, they become less influential, and it mostly concerns presidential republics. Remember, we discussed presidential republics, mixed systems, and parliamentary republics. In parliamentary republic, legislature is obviously the most important part of government, because head of the party in the parliament that person becomes prime minister, right? But in presidential republics like United States, executive branch becomes more influential than legislative branch of government. And I will give you one example. In US Constitution, it says the power to declare war belongs in Congress. But the last time it happened, it was World War II, and all the recent wars, United States have been engaged in Iraq war, two Iraq wars, Afghanistan war. They have been like special military operations. It's kind of funny, but Russian President Vladimir Putin, he actually didn't declare war against Ukraine. He calls his invasion in Ukraine a special military operation. I guess he borrowed it from United States, which called its wars in Afghanistan, in Vietnam, special military operations. Congress did not declare war against those countries. So once legislature kind of give up its power, particular power to executive branch, it usually doesn't get it back. And one of the reasons why legislatures are less powerful in recent decades, there's a partisan polarization. Parties like differ in their views. They're unable to compromise, and if one party controls, let's say, House, another party controls Senate, it means, at least in the last, let's say, 25 years, nothing happens in terms of passing new major reforms. This is reality of American political system. Thank you very much.